Across 17 star systems, the military doctrine with their triple-jointed exoskeletons needed 7 cycles. Approximately 6 standard cycles of recuperation, 4 following high-intensity reconstituting their cellular matrices. This wasn't mere suggestion. Even the notoriously stubborn 3 centuries of xenobiological research who considered rest a personal insult, eventually collapsed after their neural inhibitors forced shutdown at the 5-cycle mark. That's a huge number. Then humanity stumbled into the Galactic channel that is completely and suddenly nothing made sense anymore, and never miss fresh Station content. Theta 9 orbited a dead moon in neutral space, serving as the premier cross-species military training facility for the past 60 standard years. Its reputation stemmed from brutal efficiency. Trainees arrived as individuals from countless worlds. They departed as something resembling a cohesive unit, assuming they departed at all. The washout rate hovered around 40%. Nobody complained. War cared nothing for participation trophies. The facility's commander, a 4-armed Vex Thari named Quinval, maintained strict protocols. Each species received accommodations matching their environmental needs. Chlorine breathers got their sealed sections. Gravity sensitives enjoyed adjustable fields. The photosynthetic Landorians received entire biodomes flooded with artificial sunlight. Reasonable requests, all of them. Humans got a converted cargo bay with bunks and a protein synthesizer that produced allegedly edible brown squares. They never complained. This, more than anything, unsettled Quinval. The training cohorts rotated every 40 cycles. Fresh recruits arrived, wide-eyed and terrified, while survivors limped toward transport ships, their spirits thoroughly crushed into useful shapes. Among the instructors, specialization ruled. Quinval handled strategic planning. A Draxion named Gormath taught close-quarters brutality. The slithering Epsilon Crate who refused to provide a pronounceable name covered infiltration and assassination techniques. The human handled endurance training, and weapons, and zero-gravity combat, and hostile environment survival, and approximately 15 other disciplines that should have required separate instructors. She stood barely 1.7 meters tall, a frankly laughable height compared to most galactic species. Her species lacked natural armor plating, produced no venom, possessed no psionic abilities, and couldn't even see properly in the dark without artificial enhancement. Yet somehow, this unremarkable biped ran training sessions that left Draxion berserkers vomiting into waste receptacles. The other instructors watched her with varying degrees of confusion and respect. Mostly confusion. Quinval had initially questioned the human's assignment. The dossier seemed impressive enough. Multiple combat deployments, decorated service record, exemplary marks in hand-to-hand proficiency. But humans remained new to galactic military structures. Their physiological data suggested moderate capabilities at best. Nothing in the files explained why High Command specifically requested her for Theta 9's instructor cadre. She arrived on a Thursday. By Friday, she'd already modified 3 training courses, increased the difficulty parameters on 2 combat simulators, and somehow convinced the mess hall to stock something called coffee, which smelled like industrial solvent and apparently functioned as a mild stimulant for human neurology. The first training session began at 600 station standard. 20 recruits from 8 species assembled in Combat Arena 3, each one trying to project confidence they absolutely didn't feel. The arena stretched 50 meters in diameter, equipped with variable gravity controls, holographic threat generators, and medical drones standing by for inevitable injuries. The human entered wearing standard-issue combat armor, modified with additional plating across the shoulders and chest. Sensible additions. Her helmet remained magnetized to her hip, revealing a face that might have been carved from pale stone, features set in an expression of professional boredom. She didn't introduce herself, didn't outline training objectives, didn't deliver an inspirational speech about teamwork or honor or whatever motivational nonsense instructors typically employed. She pointed at the equipment racks lining the arena walls. "Gear up, live ammunition, stun setting, you've got 90 seconds. A Carthene recruit, thorax plates still shiny with youth, raised one serrated limb. "Instructor, we haven't received safety briefings regarding..." 70 seconds. They moved, scrambling toward equipment with the desperate energy of prey animals spotting a predator. Smart. What followed defied every documented principle of safe training methodology. The human activated the combat simulator at maximum difficulty, spawned hostile targets across elevated positions, reduced gravity to 60% standard, and then proceeded to demonstrate exactly why humanity had earned its reputation for sustained aggression. She moved through the arena like water flowing downhill, finding the path of least resistance while somehow remaining utterly unstoppable. A Draxian charged her position. She sidestepped, used his momentum against him, and sent 300 kilograms of muscle and fury crashing into a barrier wall. A Velcrin tried flanking. She'd already relocated, dropping from an overhead position to disable his weapon with a strike precise enough to damage components without triggering an explosion. The recruits learned quickly. Keep moving, maintain cover, communicate constantly, and never, ever assume the human couldn't reach your position. 4 hours into the session, half the recruits had withdrawn to medical. Not from serious injury. The human showed remarkable restraint. But pride could only sustain warriors through so many failures before even biology demanded rest. She called a 15-minute break. Recruits collapsed where they stood, sucking down water and electrolyte solutions. The human drank from a metal container, wiped her mouth, and consulted her tactical pad. Adequate effort. Resume positions. A groaning chorus answered. They resumed positions. By hour 7, even the Draxion berserker looked ready to request medical discharge. The Carthene recruit who'd asked about safety briefings sat against a wall, thorax heaving, all 4 eyes glazed with exhaustion. The human checked her chronometer. Final drill. Capture the objective scenario. Attackers versus defenders. I'm defending. This proved unwise for everyone involved, except the human. She held the objective point for 43 minutes against increasingly desperate assault waves. When recruits finally breached her position through sheer numerical advantage and coordinated tactics, she actually smiled. Better, dismissed, reconvene at 600 tomorrow. They limped toward the exits, comparing bruises and questioning their life choices. The human began field stripping her weapons for maintenance, movements automatic and efficient. Quinval observed from the control room, all 4 arms crossed in a gesture conveying deep skepticism. Medical reports 17 cases of severe exhaustion, the station commander noted through the intercom. You pushed them significantly beyond recommended safety parameters. The human didn't look up from cleaning her rifle. They survived. Tomorrow they'll be stronger. That's how this works. Carthene physiology requires, I've read the files. I know their limits. I also know what war demands. Those limits are suggestions written by bureaucrats who've never heard plasma fire. She reassembled the weapon with practiced speed. They'll adapt or wash out. Either outcome is acceptable. Quinval's mandibles clicked softly, a sound indicating contemplation. And you? How many recovery cycles do you require after such exertion? The human finally looked up, expression unreadable behind dust and sweat. I'm not done yet. Equipment maintenance, session analysis, tomorrow's lesson planning. I'll sleep when that's finished. The medical data for human physiology suggests medical data is compiled from civilian populations. I'm not civilian. She stood, slinging the rifle across her back. We done here? Quinval's species possessed excellent night vision, adapted for hunting on their twilight homeworld. Even so, something in the human's eyes suggested depths better left unexamined. Yes, dismissed. The human left. Quinval remained in the control room, reviewing session footage and trying to reconcile observed performance with documented human limitations. The numbers didn't align. According to xenobiological standards, she should be hospitalized. Instead, she walked with perfect posture toward the armory, already planning tomorrow's escalations. Other instructors reported similar observations. Humans operated beyond their own species data. They didn't sleep enough. They consumed stimulants that should cause cardiac arrest. They trained until muscles tore, then returned the next cycle like nothing happened. Perhaps most concerning, they seemed to prefer this state. The exhaustion, the pain, the constant pressure, as though rest itself represented failure. Station Medical couldn't explain it. Humans possessed redundant systems, certainly. Remarkable endurance compared to their physical size, absolutely. But nothing justified this disconnect between biological limitations and observed performance. The human instructor continued her schedule. Training sessions grew progressively more brutal. Recruit performance improved despite constant complaints about her methods. Medical discharge rates dropped. Combat scores increased. Even the Draxion berserker admitted grudging respect, though he still challenged her to combat every third cycle. She won every time. Quinval filed reports to High Command, requesting clarification regarding human training doctrines and whether permanent psychological damage was considered acceptable collateral in pursuit of martial excellence. High Command responded with a single sentence: "Humans train the way they fight. Adjust expectations accordingly." Helpful. Truly. The human instructor remained an enigma. She arrived before anyone else, left after everyone departed, ate those terrible brown protein squares without complaint, maintained equipment to obsessive standards, ran personal training sessions in addition to scheduled ones, and never, not once, showed any sign of the exhaustion that should have destroyed her weeks ago. Tomorrow would prove interesting, Quinval decided. The next cohort included Velcrin cubs, fresh from their planetary academies. Young, eager, and completely unprepared for what human training methodology would inflict upon their optimistic spirits. The station commander almost felt sympathy. Almost. The Velcrin cubs arrived with an enthusiasm that bordered on weaponized optimism. 12 of them, fresh from their homeworld's military academies, fur still showing the glossy sheen of youth. They stood roughly waist-high to most species, covered in dense russet and gray pelts, with eyes too large for their faces and ears that swiveled constantly, tracking every sound. Cute, if one ignored the retractable claws and bite force capable of shearing through composite armor. Their species had recently joined the Galactic community, eager to prove themselves worthy of the mutual defense pacts that kept smaller civilizations from becoming convenient resources for larger ones. The cubs practically vibrated with anticipation, chattering among themselves in their yipping language, comparing equipment and speculating about training scenarios. The human instructor observed them with the same expression she gave everyone else: professional assessment tinged with inevitable disappointment. She'd seen this before. Enthusiasm made terrible armor against reality. "Listen up," she called, voice cutting through the excited chatter. 12 pairs of ears immediately swiveled toward her. "Today's session covers sustained combat operations. You'll engage simulated hostiles across variable terrain for 8 hours. Ammunition is limited. Medical support is staged, not immediate. Environmental controls will fluctuate. Questions?" A cub near the front, fur marked with cadet insignia, raised one paw. "Instructor, 8 hours exceeds recommended training duration for our physiology by—" "War doesn't care about recommendations." The human tapped her tactical pad. "Combat Arena 5. Move." They moved, though confusion rippled through the group. Arena 5 earned its nickname, the Grinder, through decades of breaking overconfident recruits against increasingly absurd difficulty curves. Most instructors reserved it for advanced cohorts. Using it for newcomers violated approximately 40 safety protocols. The human activated the arena systems. Holographic terrain materialized. Urban ruins, vertical structures, narrow corridors perfect for ambushes. Hostile markers appeared on tactical displays, numbering well into triple digits. Gravity fluctuated to 70% standard, just enough to throw off movement calculations. Scenario begins in 60 seconds. Objectives are marked. Achieve them or don't. I'll be observing. She moved toward an elevated platform, rifle slung casually across her back. The cubs exchanged nervous glances. This diverged significantly from academy training, where instructors carefully guided each exercise with detailed briefings and constant supervision. The scenario began. Chaos erupted immediately. Simulated hostiles swarmed from multiple vectors, forcing the cubs into defensive positions they hadn't prepared. Plasma fire, thankfully set to stun, filled the air with ozone smell and crackling energy. The cubs responded with instincts honed through generations of pack hunting, clustering together for mutual support. Wrong approach. The human's voice crackled through their comms. Spread out. You're one grenade from total casualty. They spread out. Too far. Lost cohesion. Hostiles exploited gaps in their formation. Tighter. Maintain visual contact. Use the terrain. Hours blurred together. The cubs learned through repeated failure, each mistake immediately punished by simulated death and forced respawn. They adapted, strategies emerging through desperate improvisation. The chattering enthusiasm died quickly, replaced by grim focus and ragged breathing. The human watched from her platform, occasionally offering terse corrections, mostly letting consequences teach the lessons. She deployed similar scenarios on actual battlefields. These cubs experienced the sanitized version, where death meant embarrassment rather than oblivion. By hour 5, exhaustion showed clearly. Velcrin physiology, designed for short bursts of intense activity, struggled with sustained operations. Their movements grew sluggish. Response times increased, mistakes multiplied. The human adjusted difficulty downward slightly. Not mercy, exactly. More like recalibrating to keep them functional rather than broken. Hour 6 brought a breakthrough. The cubs synchronized their assault on a fortified position, using suppressing fire and flanking maneuvers with surprising coordination. The objective fell. Small victory, but genuine. Adequate, the human called down. Practically a celebration by her standards. Hour 7 tested everything they'd learned. The scenario threw every hostile type simultaneously, demanded ammunition conservation, required rapid position changes. The cubs performed admirably, considering they were essentially juveniles being subjected to training designed for hardened veterans. Hour 8 arrived like a blessing. The simulation ended. Hostile markers vanished. Arena lights returned to normal. 12 cubs collapsed exactly where they stood. The human descended from her platform, boots making soft sounds against the arena floor. She surveyed the scattered recruits, noting injuries, checking vital signs displayed on her tactical pad. Minor contusions, severe exhaustion, mild dehydration. Nothing that wouldn't heal. Debrief in 30 minutes, she announced. Hydrate. Medical drones are available for anyone requiring assistance. No one moved. Possibly no one could move. The human shrugged, apparently unsurprised. She'd pushed them hard, harder than regulations permitted, but within the boundaries of survival. They'd remember this session, probably curse her name for years. Also probably thank her when real combat didn't kill them because muscle memory recalled lessons learned here. She began her own post-exercise routine. Equipment check, weapon maintenance, hydration. Standard procedures drummed into her through years of service. The cubs watched through exhausted eyes, probably wondering how she remained functional after running the same exercise they'd barely survived. Humans were weird. Everyone agreed on this. The debrief occurred on schedule. The cubs dragged themselves to assigned seats, fur matted with sweat, ears drooping with fatigue. The human reviewed their performance with clinical precision, highlighting mistakes and acknowledging improvements without excessive praise. Tomorrow, Aero 600, same arena, dismissed. Groans answered, but they limped toward the exits, already forming the bonds that emerged when shared suffering forged groups into units. The human remained behind, as always. Arena maintenance, session logging, preparation for the next cycle. Routine tasks that apparently required no recovery period. She finished administrative work by 1900 hours. 9 hours since training ended, 13 hours since the session began, 17 hours total on duty without rest. The human instructor walked to the center of the empty arena, surrounded by deactivated holographic projectors and scattered equipment. She stood there for a moment, perfectly still, as though contemplating something beyond normal perception. Then, without ceremony or explanation, she simply lay down, right there on the arena floor, flat on her back, armor still fully equipped, weapons secured but accessible. She didn't move toward quarters, didn't seek a bunk or even a chair. Just lay there, eyes closed, breathing steady. Quinval, monitoring from the control room out of habit and growing concern, stared at the display screens with all four arms frozen mid-gesture. "Medical," the commander said slowly. "I think the human finally broke." Medical dispatch arrived within minutes, which said concerning things about how often the station anticipated emergencies. 2 technicians, a Yulnari and a Carthene, entered Combat Arena 5 with scanning equipment and expressions suggesting they'd seen this particular disaster coming. The human remained motionless on the floor. Not unconscious, scans confirmed. Vital signs registered within normal parameters for her species, albeit on the lower end of active consciousness. Heart rate steady. Respiration regular. Neural activity indicated awareness. She just stopped moving. "Instructor." The Yulnari technician approached cautiously, medical scanner humming. "Can you hear me? Are you experiencing distress?" One eye opened. Regarded the technician with profound disinterest. "Fine. You're lying on the floor." "Correct." "In full combat armor." "Also correct." The Carthene technician consulted his scanner, mandibles clicking confusion. "Biological readings suggest extreme fatigue. Your musculature shows stress markers consistent with severe overexertion. Lactic acid buildup exceeds—" "I'm aware." The eye closed again. "I'll recover. Medical protocols require—" "I'm not going to medical." Each word emerged flat, final. "I'm resting. Here, go away." The technicians exchanged glances that transcended species barriers, communicating the universal sentiment of professionals dealing with difficult patients. They retreated to consult with Quinval, who observed from the control room with growing fascination. "She refuses transport to medical," the Yulnari reported. "Insists she's simply resting." "On the arena floor?" "Yes, Commander." "In armor?" "Yes, Commander." Quinval's mandibles worked silently. Human behavior consistently defied rational analysis. Perhaps this represented some cultural practice, like those meditation rituals the Landorians performed standing on one appendage for hours. Bizarre, but ultimately harmless. Monitor remotely. Intervene only if her condition deteriorates. The technicians withdrew, leaving the human alone in the vast arena. Security feeds showed her lying there perfectly still, apparently content with cold metal flooring and zero amenities. 20 minutes passed. Then the cubs returned. Nobody quite knew why. They'd been dismissed, should have been in their quarters, treating injuries and contemplating career alternatives. Instead, all 12 came padding back into Arena 5, moving with the cautious curiosity that defined young predators encountering something unexpected. They spotted the human immediately, approached as a group, ears forward, eyes wide. One cub, bolder than the rest, crept close enough to sniff cautiously at the instructor's boot. The human didn't react. Another cub ventured closer, then another. They circled the prone figure, clearly confused by this development. Their instructor, who'd spent 8 hours demonstrating impossible endurance and tactical superiority, now lay completely vulnerable on the arena floor. What happened next defied every xenobiological prediction and cultural understanding the Galactic community had compiled about appropriate species interaction. The first cub climbed onto the human's armored chest. Just scrambled right up, claws finding purchase on equipment straps and armor plating, settling into the space between the chest plate and shoulder guards. The human remained motionless. Didn't protest. Didn't even open her eyes. The cub curled into a tight ball and immediately fell asleep. The other cubs watched this development with keen interest. Whatever instinct drove the first apparently sang through the entire group. Within minutes, All 12 cubs had clambered onto the human instructor, finding spaces across her armored form, tucking into gaps that shouldn't have accommodated living creatures but somehow did. They settled like she was furniture, or a particularly comfortable rock, or perhaps something deeper their biology recognized, even if their conscious minds didn't understand. And then, as if someone had flipped a collective switch, all 12 cubs fell into instant, profound sleep. Quinval stared at the security feed, blinked all 4 eyes in sequence, a species-specific gesture indicating complete cognitive breakdown. Checked the feed timestamp to confirm this wasn't archived footage or some elaborate prank. The image remained. 1 human instructor, armored and horizontal. 12 Velcrin cubs, piled on her like she was a designated napping platform, all of them sleeping so deeply that their breathing synchronized into a collective rhythm. "Medical," Quinval said carefully. "Are you observing this?" "Yes, Commander." The Yulnari technician's voice carried the tone of someone questioning their perception of reality. "We have no explanation. Velcrin cubs are predators. They don't casually approach other species, especially not in vulnerable states." "Correct, Commander." "They certainly don't use said species as sleeping arrangements." "Also correct, Commander. Yet they are doing exactly that." "Yes, Commander." Quinval pulled up xenobiological files on Velcrin social behavior. Cubs remained with their pack units until reaching maturity. They bonded strongly with family groups, showed extreme caution around unfamiliar species, definitely didn't spontaneously adopt aliens as napping furniture. The files offered no explanation for current observations. Gormath, the Draxion instructor, arrived in the control room after someone sent him footage. He watched in silence for several minutes, massive frame completely still. "Humans are insane," he finally declared. "That's not helpful analysis. It's accurate analysis." Gormath gestured at the screens with one clawed hand. "Look at her. She's not even concerned. Just accepted it." True enough. The human's vital signs remained steady. No stress indicators, no elevated heart rate. She lay there beneath a pile of sleeping cubs with all the concern of someone experiencing a mildly interesting weather pattern. The Epsilon crate instructor slithered into the control room, optical sensors fixed on the displays. It observed for 30 seconds before making a sound that might have been laughter or possibly existential despair. Hard to tell with that species. "This explains nothing about human capabilities," it hissed, "but raises approximately 1,000 new questions." Quinval had to agree. The station commander made a decision. "No one disturbs them. Post guards outside Arena 5, full security monitoring. I want xenobiologists and behavioral specialists reviewing this footage immediately. And someone contact High Command." "What should we tell them, Commander?" Quinval stared at the screens, watching one of the cubs shift slightly in sleep, tucking closer against the human's neck. "Tell them the human instructor has apparently acquired cubs, and nobody, including the human, seems concerned about this development." The message was sent. High Command's response arrived 6 hours later, consisting of one sentence. "Document everything. Helpful. Truly." The human woke 3 hours later, surrounded by sleeping cubs, and simply waited. Didn't disturb them. Didn't call for assistance. Just lay there until natural wake cycles brought them back to consciousness one by one. When the last cub stirred and scrambled off with embarrassed yips, the human sat up, rolled her shoulders to work out stiffness, and walked out of the arena like nothing unusual had occurred. Quinval intercepted her in the corridor. "Instructor, we need to discuss what happened in Arena 5. Cubs were tired. They slept, not complicated. They slept on you." "Observant." The human continued walking toward the armory. "Velcrin don't exhibit that behavior with other species. Our xenobiologists are baffled." The human paused, turning to face the commander with an expression suggesting she was explaining something painfully obvious. "Pack behavior. They spent 8 hours under stress, working as a unit, trusting each other for survival. Their biology registered me as part of that pack structure. Safe, stable, so they reacted accordingly. That's not how interspecies dynamics work. It's exactly how they work when you stop treating them like scientific curiosities and start treating them like living beings. She resumed walking. The cubs needed rest. They found it. Problem solved. Quinvol's mandibles clicked rapidly, processing implications. You're saying humans naturally trigger pack bonding responses in other species? I'm saying we recognize patterns, social structures. We've been doing it for thousands of years with every species we encountered on our homeworld. Why would it stop working just because we left the planet? The explanation settled over Station Command like uncomfortable revelation. Military doctrine focused on strength, firepower, tactical advantage, measurable quantities. But humans operated on a different axis entirely. They didn't just fight alongside other species. They bonded with them, made them pack. Research requests flooded in from 17 different xenobiology departments. Command wanted studies. Universities demanded data. Everyone suddenly needed to understand how humans managed what should have been biologically impossible. The human instructor ignored all of it, continued her training schedule, pushed recruits to their limits, occasionally lay down for rest in inconvenient locations. Cubs started showing up regularly. Not just Velcrin. Other species, too. Young recruits who'd survived her training sessions would find her during off hours, seeking proximity without understanding why. She never discouraged it, never encouraged it either, just accepted it as natural consequence of shared experience. Combat performance metrics across the station improved dramatically. Units that trained under the human demonstrated cohesion scores that shattered previous records. They fought harder, recovered faster, showed resilience that couldn't be explained by physical conditioning alone. High Command eventually issued new guidelines, human integration protocols, suggestions for leveraging their apparent ability to forge connections across species barriers. Bureaucracy attempting to codify something that defied systematic analysis. The human instructor received commendations, recognition for innovative training methodology, requests for transfer to other facilities, all of which she declined. Quinvol found her one evening in Arena 5, naturally, lying on the floor after another brutal session. 3 cubs were already climbing aboard. "You're not tired, are you?" the commander asked. "This is deliberate." The human opened one eye. "They need it. Stress relief, security, whatever you want to call it. Combat training breaks something in young recruits. This helps put pieces back together. That's not your responsibility. Maybe not, but it's necessary." She closed her eye again. "War demands we turn living beings into weapons. Least we can do is remind them they're still alive." Quinvol watched for a moment longer, then left. The human lay there, armored and still, while cubs sought comfort from someone who'd spent all day teaching them how to survive violence. Across 17 star systems, military doctrine continued emphasizing strength and firepower. But quietly, gradually, training facilities started including human instructors. Not for their combat prowess, though that remained impressive. For something else entirely. Turned out the most dangerous thing about humans wasn't their capacity for violence. It was their insistence on maintaining connection despite it. They could teach killing efficiency while somehow preserving the humanity, or alien equivalent thereof, in their students. Pack bonding, the xenobiologists called it. Evolutionary advantage disguised as emotional vulnerability. The human instructor would have called it something simpler. Basic decency in indecent circumstances. But she didn't call it anything. Just kept training, kept pushing, kept lying down afterward while cubs climbed on board. War remained war. Brutal and necessary and terrible. Humans remained human. Making it slightly less terrible through sheer stubborn refusal to let violence erase connection. The galaxy adjusted its understanding accordingly. Some species did it through strength, others through intelligence. Humans did it by being absolutely impossible to categorize, predict, or fully understand, and occasionally by serving as nap platforms for exhausted cubs. Military doctrine never quite figured out how to weaponize that, probably for the best.